So today is July 25th, 2023, Daytona Beach Shores, and this is our budget workshop. Sherry, can you take a roll, please?
Mayor Miller,
Here.
Vice Mayor Politis,
Here.
Commissioner Bryan,
Here.
Commissioner Economos,
Here.
Commissioner Lindell.
Here.
Thank you, Sherry. So the purpose of the meeting this evening is that we are going to be talking about our fiscal year 2023-2024 proposed budget and millage rate. And will that be our Director of Finance that will be coming?
Yes,
Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Sorry about that. Madam Mayor,
I still don't think we can hear you real well.
is that better?
That's better.
Everybody here?
Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Lori Irwin, Director of Finance. And the reason we're all here together is to go over our proposed budget for the 23-24 fiscal year. And this is the time when we can openly talk, myself, the directors, the city manager, and commission regarding the budget. And if there are any questions that you need directed right to the department heads, they are here to answer any questions. As you can see here, this year's budget will be $19,700,000 is the proposed budget. This is a 24.6% increase over last year. And as you'll also see here, that actually 82% of that increase is due to capital expenditures, and we will go over those later on here in the presentation. We are proposing the rate tonight of 4.588%, which is actually the rollback rate. And you can see here, I'm not going to go through everything. Some of the things that add to the increase is health insurance, personal costs, property insurance has gone up. This is a little bit of interesting information that I thought you'd like from the property appraiser. And this actually has...
Can you want to hold the questions maybe until even the end of this slide? Or no, go ahead.
Yeah, this is on the first page. Is that CPI from June to June?
Yes, it is.
So the 3.68 is from this June to next June.
Last June to this June.
Now, there's a 9.1%.
Last year's CPI was 6.9%. That was from the previous June. Every year we do the year, so it's June over June. This year's is 3.48% CPI.
Well, I think one of the important points that you skipped over was the proposed tax rate is lower than the previous tax rate.
Yes.
So we actually are having not only the rollback, but we're having a tax decrease in
Well,
terms of the rate.
What it is the amount of the tax rate that we have this current year, okay, produced a certain amount of tax revenue. This rollback rate is actually giving us that same tax revenue. So it's not really a tax decrease because we're creating the same tax revenue.
But it's a decrease in the tax rate.
From what we had last year.
Okay.
So let me ask you, Director, how would you like to do it? Do you want to finish one page, then have questions? How would you like to do it?
It is what you would like.
Okay, all right. All right, we'll let you at least finish a page before you go on to the next one before we ask questions. Okay.
So here we can see that this is looking at the just values for the 2023 tax year. This is from the property appraisers. This has all of the 16 municipalities. And you can see here that Daytona Beach Shores actually has a 0.2% decrease in our just values, which would be your market values.
Mostly due to the hurricane, would you say?
Yes,
Okay.
it's mainly due to the hurricanes. And we're expecting next year, the property appraiser is expecting that to change as things get repaired.
Okay, so when the statement was made by our governor that, looking around, he saw the highest devastation in Daytona Beach shores, looking along, so this just adds to that,
Yes,
that,
this-
yes, even though we have about 3 or 4 coastal cities on here, we're the only negative.
Correct. Because as you can see, everything went up 10% or higher, up to 18%, unlike the shores.
Okay, do we have any, and I know you wouldn't know, but, people like a Orange City or a Deltona, that they did have effects of flooding in their cities. Is that the reason why we're not noticing those property tax values going down?
I don't know. I mean, we can assume that in different areas, but as long as there's a buyer out there, I mean, and with everything that we've had here, maybe the buyers weren't there at the time because of the assessments for the seawalls and getting them repaired.
Okay, thank you.
Here, what we're looking at are the current and proposed rollback rates from the property appraisers. As you can see here, if you look at your change from rollback rate, this is what has been proposed by each city. I don't have Pearson, as you can see there. And as Daytona Beach Shores is proposing the rollback rate of 4.588%, you can see there's no change. But as you see the area cities, the change from rollback rate actually increases quite a bit, and we have some neighboring cities that are proposing a tax rate of 32+%. So we're not, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, looking at the coastal cities again, there's such a big disparity between us, a Daytona Beach, a Ormond Beach, and especially Ponce Inlet. I feel like if you look at the damage that we sustained between Daytona Beach shores, Ponce was pretty much right below us. But I'm just very surprised about these two.
Again, they do have the ability in your proposed rate. You cannot go down from your proposed rate. I mean, you can't go up from your proposed rate. You can only go down.
Okay.
So maybe that's why they're doing that.
Okay, this is the time I'd like to say too, now I've had several conversations with you, with Kurt, and saying how with all the damage we had are we going to roll back? Is that the right thing to do? And the conversations that I had was whatever we would get, if we got an additional, wouldn't be that high, and we want to be very, very sensitive to our residents. They are doing high insurance, they're doing assessments, they've done so much, especially on the condos on the beach. If we can help them in any little way, this is our way of saying, this is how we're trying to help you. But I do want to caution, be prepared for next year. I mean, enjoy, if this is what the commission approves tonight, enjoy this, because next year, with all things coming apart, it probably will not be that we'd be going to rollback again. So I want to prepare everyone for that. But I congratulate, if we go ahead with this, I congratulate the staff for coming up with something that you're sensitive to the needs of the people, especially on the beach.
Did you talk to any other finance directors from neighboring cities like Ponce Inlet? How they're able to roll it back even more?
This means
No,
we're
They
increasing,
roll it up.
we're increasing at
Those
that
are
point.
increases.
Oh, they're okay, all right, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
we're the only two that will have a rollback. The other ones, so that's what we're saying, Ponce Inlet being in the same position that we're in with damage is going to do 32.76 above
see that.
rollback. Okay. So, so the ones I would like us to point out are the Ponce Inlet, Ormond Beach, and Daytona, that had the damage. Naturally, we don't have Wilbur-Lexi here since that's the county.
This is where the smaller number is the better one.
Yes, right, that's right.
Yes.
I bring this up, these are leisure services. These are the services and things that we have in the city that Nancy, our director Nancy Maddox, takes care of. These are things that we offer our citizens, not just our citizens, but anybody that comes into the city. And I want to remind people that, we do this all year long with your tax dollars. We have these activities, have these events, and they will be going on going forward. So it's nothing, we're not cutting any services in order to bring back, to propose a rollback. we're actually staying with what we have here. And hopefully, you know, as you'll see later, adding to that.
So it's a value added to be a resident of the shores.
Yes, it is. You can see here, like pictures, we can see here on our general fund revenue that of the $19.7 million that we're proposing, that 46.5% of that is with your ad valorem taxes, those are your tax dollars. So, and you know, there's other areas here, but that was the one I wanted you to see, that mainly everything that we do is through your, you know, tax dollars. These are expenditures that we have by department, and as you can see, 41% of all expenditures are for our public safety department. We pride ourselves in our public safety department. They are the best around, and this is why, because we take care of them, they take care of us. We also have, you can see here, the next groups that are larger are your Parks and Rec and your community center. Again, the activities and the things that we do for our residents.
What falls into physical environment?
That actually is our garbage revenue. Now, looking at the impact of a going to rollback, what we did was look at a single-family home. We have 448 parcels, of which 242 of them are homestead. The average taxable value of one parcel is $341,000. At the current rate that we have this year of the 4.6389%, they would be paying $1,584 and change. If we go to that rollback rate of 4.588%, they will be paying $1,566. It's actually a savings of $17 and change.
Is that a year?
A year. Now we have a lot of the condominium. We have a lot of that. As you can see, there's 5,834 parcels. You can see 1,783 are homestead. Their average taxable value is $267,000. Now, they'll be paying at the current rate $1,241, and if we go to the rollback rate, it's $1,227. Again, a savings of $13 and change.
So it looks like we can say that the people are paying less in taxes
Yeah.
in both situations. Yeah.
And that's not even including inflation.
And,
They're paying it cheaper dollars.
yeah.
Lori, has our homestead, the number of homestead properties that we have on the shores, does that change much year over year?
Not normally. Over the years, I think we've stayed pretty close to where we are. I mean, because you have people buying and selling, so.
I just wondered, I know we've been hearing about how many more people are coming to Florida, or a lot of our residents had a home here and one up north and decided, I'm gonna give the one up north, so consequently this one would become homesteaded, but you didn't see a sharp intake.
No, I did not.
Okay, all right, and did we figure out it's somewhere around 34% of our homes that, between the single family and the condos, so,
Yeah.
okay, so about 65, okay.
Now looking at highlighting each department, I'm not going into each individual department. You do have your budgets that were given to you. I'm just going to touch on a couple of differences that we can see throughout the budget. One is in your legislative department. There was a decrease of $175,000. That's due to the Chase property. Last year we bought the Chase property. We're not buying that again this year, so that would come out. Then we have in the executive, there's a $500,000 increase for engineering costs. This is associated with our emergency operations center that we're hoping to build and we're trying to get a grant right now. We're like on step 2 of it, and we're getting a $3.2 million grant. Now, these grants are a 75%, 25%, so no matter what, if we get this $3.2 million grant, we have to, pay 25%, $800,000. So we're looking at putting out $500,000 for the engineering cost associated with that.
And that is just the cost to analyze, that is not to build, rebuild, or do anything, okay? And then, is there any money that we'd be able to obtain to do the building or renovation?
That's what we're in the process of doing right now with the state, and that would be the $3.2 million. The finance department increased $130,000. This was due to another grant. This is a resilience study. We had applied for this grant last August, and this is through the state. This is to look at flooding and sea level rise on our critical infrastructure, so this will be a great thing. But again, it's a reimbursement grant, so we put out $130,000, and then they reimburse us the $130,000. So where you see the expense, there's also revenue to match that. Another thing to bring up here is, I'm sure you all saw, there's a line called general debt, and that there's a couple $100,000 sitting there, and you're thinking, oh, we paid our debt off. Well, we did. What this is long-term liabilities. GASB, which is the Governmental Associated Accounting Standards Board, they put out standards every year, sometimes several a year. And what happens is they have GASB 87 and 96, and they have to do with leases and subscription software. So what happens is, for a transparency issue, anything that is longer than 12 months that you're going to have, they want you basically capitalize it. You show it forward, so you get the payments for, if it's a 6-year contract, bring it back to present day value, so that the voters all know that we are in a contract for this dollar figure. So that is what that is.
So when we told our residents, I believe it was 2 years ago, we paid off 100% of our debt, that's still a true statement that, okay, I just want to make sure people understand that. Okay, thank you.
Mayor, when you say bring back the present value, you actually use a discount?
Yeah.
Yeah, what discount did you use?
Basically, what I'm using is an average of what we're getting for our investments.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
on the previous page before we go to the next one,
Can you go back one, please?
you were asked, in the budget, you have this $500,000 for engineering costs. So this company that you propose to hire is going to give you I guess, a feasibility study on building an operations center that will help in the future when we have hurricanes? Is that what that $500,000 is for?
It would actually be to design a structure.
Okay, so it has architectural components to it.
Correct.
I was gonna say $500,000 is a lot just to tell me, okay, this piece of dirt that we own, let's go ahead and build a building there. So it has some
Yeah, that's for the design.
some utility to it.
Correct.
And of course, you're gonna get a lot of grant money, hopefully if it gets all approved. Okay, thank you. I'm good.
So Kurt, if, I know right now you're looking at maybe renovating a piece of property we already have. Is there still the possibility out there that we might look at buying any property in the general area to do this EOC in instead of?
The only piece that's available right now in that area would be Bank of America property. I did talk to them about a month, maybe 6 weeks ago, and this is the group that had purchased it through the auction. So shortly after the auction, maybe 3 or 4 months, I had talked to them and they said, 1.9 million is what they were looking for. They bought it for 1.3 at the time, said they had $100,000 in costs, closing costs, etc. When I talked to them about 6 weeks ago, just seeing where they were at with it, if they had anybody coming in, they said they don't have anybody coming in, but they're open to offers. They would just like to get their cost back out of it.
Okay, so at some time, can we shift this 500,000 to, instead of this feasibility study, maybe looking at taking that money towards that. Will that be a decision the commission would make at that time, or can give us some insight on that?
Well, you're gonna have design costs. We haven't obviously contracted with an architect yet.
Okay.
So, I think there's actually, or maybe we did last meeting, approved a continuing services contract for architectural services. Once we engage an architect and have an idea, that money would go to an actual design, but the way I'm kind of looking at it is that design will be set up to go either replacing an existing building or on a different property if we purchase, say we were to buy the Bank of America property. It would probably be replacing that building and doing this hardened structure for the EOC.
Okay.
And the EOC is not just an EOC, keep in mind, that would end up being kind of a multi-purpose use facility. It's not that we need an EOC every day of every year, but when we need it, we need it.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Kurt, wouldn't it make more sense to do it after we own the building or a property, so they could design to that specific property rather than designing something hypothetically now and then having to redo it when we have the actual property or building? You know, it seems like we're putting the cost.
That's part of the discussion we'll have when we're engaging an architect to talk about that. We have proposed the idea right now, because we don't own another parcel to put it on, we're proposing to use the Public Safety Annex building and replace that, go 2 stories or some such design, depending on what they come up with, to do that property. But the design of a building, if we're doing a tear down at either location, as long as you're really just having to do, correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, at that point, you're really just redoing a site plan and showing how you access the building and how utilities, et cetera, would be run. But the building would be the building, whether it's on Bank of America or the other city property.
Well, wouldn't have to be adjustments made based on the width and depth of the property and the location, be able to get in and out and so forth?
There could be, but I think the way we're gonna design it, it'd be feasible, and I'm thinking of the Bank of America property, because that's the only one I can think of that's really close there. I think it would fit either location based on standard design.
Yeah, I just don't like spending $500,000 for a study and then having a revision for another $200,000 or $300,000. It doesn't make sense to me.
Kurt,
Yes, go ahead.
based on our discussions this morning, it was my impression that we're not going to spend that $500,000 if we don't get the grant.
Well, we're trying to get further along in the grant, but at some point we will have to, and that's why we're putting in the budget. If the grant moves along, then yes, we would be engaging, but
If we don't get the grant, we wouldn't spend the $500,000.
at this point, yes, that's my understanding.
That's a whole different story.
Yeah.
I thought we were gonna spend it and then try to get the
No.
grant. Okay.
We're in the process that we've applied for the grant.
Yes.
Okay, so the answer, whether we get the grant or don't, but we've already applied for it. Have we done all the paperwork, submitted all of that for it?
What happens is it's kind of tiered. It's approved through a local committee that it's already been approved. Now what happens is I'm working with the state of Florida, and if it gets approved there, it's like a 99.9% chance FEMA approves it, because it's ultimately a FEMA grant. So I've been working with them actually weekly on the application, so that.
When do you anticipate we might get an answer, whether it's approved or not?
We're looking at, it has to be submitted August 29th, and then they get 90 days.
Okay, so by the end of the year, we would know.
Yes.
Okay.
But there's nothing in the budget offsetting this expense, right? Because we don't have the money in it.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Lori. You can go ahead and move on.
Okay, now we'll be highlighting some departments. We're looking here at public safety. And the things we want to show here are that we're creating 2 new patrol positions for that. And then we're also, the increase in budget is due to a possible mid-year 4.6% increase in base hourly rate for public safety officers. Because the one thing we're doing, we're now starting to fill our positions, and every city out there is looking for
Same thing.
public safety. And then what happens is they go and they have in their contracts to get a mid-year pay increase, where we have not done that in the past. Actually, last year they did, the chief did come to you asking you to do an increase, if you recall that. And this would take care of that, so that it's there, that if it's needed, we can take care of them so we don't lose our public safety.
Okay, I'm very happy to see, I believe it was probably 2+ years ago, one of our commissioners was pretty adamant about going down in the number of patrol positions that we had. I'm seeing here, will this bring us back up to where we were 2 years ago? I mean, I know we don't have them right now, but we have the slots for them. Is this 36 the number? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Glad to see that.
The other thing that is highlighted in the public safety budget that you,
I'm sorry, Chief, did we state that
It
incorrectly?
goes back to the 37 we were at before that change.
37, that's what, okay.
Yes.
So in that, we went from 37 to 35.
Correct.
Okay, this will take us back up again.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
the other thing that you'll notice in your budget, I'm sure you've noticed, is that there's actually an increase in a budget line department for IT of $777,000 and a decrease to other general of that. This is, what we've done is IT has been in the past in the other government budget for City Hall and in the public safety budget. This is putting it all together in one area so that Chris doesn't have to go looking all over for his budget.
Okay.
Community services. Here, the increase is, we have some increases in contract services due to building inspectors and electrical contractors. The one thing that we can say with these hurricanes, they've limited us to what we have in the way of our own personnel to take care of the inspections, trying to get some of the electrical work done. So by putting this in the budget, that will help our people and get the work done. Now, all of these departments have larger capital outlays this year, which you'll see here shortly. Very shortly. What we have here is, this has a capital outlay for each department. You'll see right there on the top, the executive, it's got your EOC to $500,000. I'm not gonna go through all this. What I do wanna point out though, is that you'll see that there's a PY here periodically. That's for prior year. What happens, you'll see here, there's under public safety, there's patrol cars, there's 5 of them for $241,000. What happens is we budget things, say, in this current year, and due to no fault of our own, shipping, they can't get here by the end of the year. So what we have to do is carry over that money into next year. So wherever you see a PY, that's what that is. Those are things that were actually budgeted in this current year, but they won't be done in this current year, so we need to move those into the next year. You'll also see here that we have hurricane next to them. Those are for hurricane damage costs. We have a lot of things that we have not been able to have repaired. Again, not due to no fault of anyone here. What it is it's vendors. I mean, we know with all the damage throughout, the state, trying to get vendors, materials, it's hard getting people. So these are just some things that we're moving, as they're able to be taken care of. So we want to make sure that the money's there next year in case they need it, if they can't get done this year.
Laura, those 3 line items, the replacement, the garage door, the monument, will that be covered by FEMA at the 75 or 80%? And we're just worried about getting our vendors, suppliers.
Those actually will be taken care of by FEMA and insurance, and we've budgeted that into revenue.
Okay.
What I've got budgeted right now is, roughly $850,000 between FEMA and insurance for revenue. Now you'll see on the next page, which brings to it, is you'll see seawalls of $1 million, again, hurricane. The revenue has not been, that is a 75-25% for hurricanes. So what we've done is budgeted what we thought we would get. Because what happens with FEMA is that we need to rebuild it, pay for everything, then we get all of that data, send it to them, and then they'll reimburse us. But it goes through FEMA, then it goes through the state of Florida. So we get it after the state of Florida agrees with it, and then we get that. It's actually a 75, there's a 25%, but the state of Florida matches half of that, 12.5%.
And can you tell me where insurance falls into that equation? Is it FEMA first and then insurance, or?
It's insurance first.
Insurance
So
first.
insurance takes care of everything that they will, and then FEMA. And as you can see here on this slide, you'll also see there's a gas tax because we receive gas tax from the state of Florida. And it can only be used for, say, crosswalks, road repair. And so what happens is if we don't do work, it gets put into the reserves, but only for those items, so it's restricted. So what happens here is you can see prior year that we have $411,000 worth of prior year expenses that we're moving into next year's budget. So we're just basically taking the money from this year, moving it into next year. The gas taxes money, again, that we receive from the state. So it's dollar for dollar, what they're giving, that's what we're using. And then the hurricane, the $1.2 million, that is hurricane. It's hopefully a one-time thing right now. We don't have to worry about that, but.
As far as the gas tax, is it my understanding that what we receive as a city has gone down significantly over the years?
Significantly. Yeah, they're doing it now because we're in a local agreement with Volusia County, and they started doing it based on road mileage, which we don't have much.
We're going from, and I'm gonna ballpark some numbers here, but 5-year step down. Originally, we were getting about 200,000 a year down to about 2,000 a year.
Wow.
So,
So significant.
yes.
Now, we're going to talk about the enterprise fund, which is our sewer fund. And you'll see this year's budget is $4.3 million. And your capital expenditures are $2.2 million. The big thing here I wanted to put out there, you can see that the health insurance, I mean, the costs are the same for the general fund or the enterprise fund per employee. But we have increased in our sewer accounts. Last year we had 968 versus this year we had 997 accounts. That is due to new construction, so Ocean's 25, or it's anyone that is going from sewer, from septic to sewer. And there's several properties around here that are still on, they say septic, but they are. So that's a good thing when that number is going up. And here is our revenue for the enterprise fund. Again, you'll see 83% of the revenue is charges. It's charges for sewer. That's the services. There is interest, and the transfer from fund. That's for, as you'll see later, it's a capital outlay that we need for this year. And again, the expenditures are 82% operations. So basically, what the sewer fund charges, they're putting out there for their operations. Now, the highlights I would like to put out is one, I'm sure you looked in there and saw an internal service charge to the general fund with an increase of 13.9%. What this is the charge for city employees, general employees, doing things and helping out, so like the billing, anything that we do, maybe it's software for the sewer fund. This is just where they're reimbursing the general fund for that. And the other area is professional services, which you'll see here along with your capital budget. This includes $400,000 for engineering services for utility master plan. And actually, the city manager will be discussing that with you.
We actually have a couple items in here that I'll begin with that 400,000. So the last time the city did a major sewer project was about 2004. I came from a city that had put off projects on their sewer for a very long time, and it got to be where we had an immediate demand, not money to fill the demand. And so this utility master plan calls for an engineer to come in and look at our system, do a study of the system, and then put together basically a capital plan, call it a 5- and 10-year plan, that going forward, if we choose to do it every 5 years or every 10 years, we can just get an update to that plan, and they will give you projects and estimated costs that may need to be updated as the marketplace changes. But this will allow us to do some longer-term planning for the sewer system. It's one of those systems that nobody really pays attention to or cares about until it doesn't work. So my hope is to put a plan in place to make sure that we never run into that situation and identify those things. As part of that, you'll see down below in the capital budget line items, force main project design of 600,000, force main project phase 1 installation of $1 million. We're proposing these, and these are kind of not super firm numbers in any way, shape, or form. We're working with engineers to come up with this plan, but the city has never done a legislative ask. And you probably read recently in the paper that a lot of the cities in the county and across the state get money annually from the legislature as a line item in their budget. And we're proposing to do a force main project. That's probably one of our biggest areas of concern about the system. We do a pretty good job of being able to see and keep our lift stations up to date, and our laterals, because our crews in the past have been able to in-house do the cameraing of the lines and everything. But force mains, that's a whole nother ball game. So at one point we had gotten a quote, I think about 2 years ago, to get a camera system in there, and it was going to be over $1 million just to video them. And with the age of these pipes,
So the cameras would tell you your pipes are old.
the cameras would tell us our pipes are old. I mean, obviously they're going to identify an immediate crack or an area of concern, but they're going to tell us our pipes are old that we already know. So to me, that seems like we're throwing good money towards bad. I'd rather look at doing a project going straight to design and replacement of those so that we know they're good for another 50 to 75 years for the city going forward, and do an ask of the legislature. Part of that ask is they usually like to see that you're matching that money. The sewer fund has plenty of reserves to do what I'll call 1.6 million here. We have plenty of reserves to do that as a match, and part of that will be, and this would all come back before you to formalize that ask and how we would go about that. But
But Kurt, if I can go in here too, with all the work that I do in Volusia County with the other mayors, with other representatives from the city, I just want to stress a couple things that you said. There was a couple of cities that have never asked for money before, as we never have. So, that's very important, I think, when they look to see, does somebody come back to us year after year after year asking for money? And of these cities, a lot of them were first-time cities, and the majority of them, if they didn't get everything they asked for, they got a good percent of it. One of the things that every one of these had in common, and I don't know if this is the time to bring it up or not, they used a lobbyist. as far as I know, ever since I've been here, I don't know about Mel and Richard, we've never used a lobbyist. So I think from
We
what.
got you.
I think from what they're saying is they felt that they were successful because of that. So would it be a discussion we'd have to after we're done here? Should we poll the commission and see? How could we go about?
So if you're interested in that, I think it might be a very good thing to have a lobbyist if we're going to go after that legislative ask. They know the ins and outs of who to talk to make sure that you get both the House and Senate support, because there were quite a few locations this year that got Senate support but no House support, or House support and no Senate support. And that's where it plays in. You know, we may have a good relationship with our members of the House, but we have to get the Senate side as well. And while we do actually have a good relationship with both sides, it's not just our local folks that vote on it. And they know how to push that through. And I will use my former city or past life in Holly Hill. They asked last year for the first time for money towards a fire station. They did use a lobbyist and got, I believe it was 2.4 million, if I have the number correct.
It goes 2.3, it doesn't matter, so we're right around.
But they did get their first ask ever approved.
Kurt, can I ask you, are there lobbyists who work for multiple cities, especially small cities like us?
Absolutely.
Okay. Unless there's a conflict of interest, I'm sure.
Correct. And what we would have to do is probably, obviously, and I think this is what the mayor was alluding to, we would have to add money. We don't have any money for that in the budget. We would need to add money for a lobbyist. And we can charge that to both general fund and sewer fund, especially since we're going after sewer fund. But lobbyists don't just do the money side of it. They also will keep you up to date on bills and other stuff, and the advocacy that goes behind that, and keep you up to date on where bills are at and those kind of things as well.
Do you have any idea what a lobbyist might cost for a city like us?
Go ahead.
Mel, and everyone else, I don't profess to know everything, but I do have a good rapport with our House of Representative Tom Leake. And it would, and I'm sure so does Madam Mayor, and so does Kurt, but he would be the guy that I would ask about who has some clout, how much do they cost, and you know, and what is the process all about? And so maybe that could be a separate conversation when it does come up that we're going to go forward and do that. But these are very smart questions.
No, but that makes a lot of sense, because we want to know who.
Because I want to know who's got juice,
who they listen to.
who's got juice and who doesn't.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right, and I think from checking around, were we thinking maybe $40,000 a year? Was that about the number? Was it a little higher? And it depends, again, are we going to get a year contract, year by, yeah.
So there's a lot of variables that, you know, with going to Tallahassee, I've met quite a few while we were up there. And some do it on a monthly basis, and they'll do it for 8 months a year. Some will do it only while they're in session. I don't propose we do in session, because there's a whole lot that happens before session even begins. And we have to have our ask in pretty early this year, because the session starts early. So if it is something the commission wants to consider, we would need to get on an RFQ or RFP, depending on how we did that, pretty quickly and get that out there. But it varies in price. I talked with one actually last week, and their firm, they do roughly, for a city our size, you gave a ballpark figure of $5,000 a month. So that's $60,000. But that's full service, depending on what we're trying to do with that and how we write the RFP, RFQ. And I have a feeling Becky's probably done that before, has one from her past that we might be able to
I could
work.
find one. Oftentimes, cities just pick one.
Just pick one?
Yeah. I mean, but I have done RFQs, but I think the comment about talking to your local legislators about who has, you know, a really good rapport, and not here, but I could tell you our firm represents 11 jurisdictions, and most of them have lobbyists, and there are some that are better than others.
Absolutely.
Okay, I just want to stress that this is the time. I mean, we looked at maybe doing something last year and did not, but again, this is when we have the need. This is when we have never asked before, and this is when that we have representation in the House of Representatives on that committee locally here.
Yeah, our local rep is the chairman for the House Appropriations Committee, so
So again,
only for next year, so this is our,
this is our
we have a leg up because our local guy is there, so that's why we're proposing to do that this year.
So Becky, what do we need? Do we need a consensus that we will give our city manager the direction to go forward and research this? What do we need to do? Well, I guess we can't vote this evening.
No, and I think that probably just asking him to do some research on it and, ask questions. And I'd be happy to do an RFQ if you want, or an RFP.
And what is the determining factor, whether we do that or whether we just select one?
We'll have to look at our purchasing policies and procedures. I don't remember exactly there's some language about consultants in there, but I don't remember it off the top of my head, but
I don't remember either. I'll check.
I'll call it a consensus to do that. I will get with the city attorney going forward, and we'll try and look at those codes and see what we can do within our codes and bring back something to the city commission.
All right, now again, will that be too late? Remember, we're not having a meeting the 1st in August. So do we need another workshop? I just hate to wait another month to do that.
I think let us look at it,
Okay.
see and research it a little bit, and then we can, if we need to schedule another workshop, I'll come to you, Mayor, to call a meeting to do that.
Any other questions on that before we move on? I know we're running a little low on time. Anything else on the budget that, Lori, can I ask you a question, though? My understanding was I thought that second date was going to be September 11th. Do I have that wrong?
Yes, well, looking at it, what's happened is, first we noticed that September 11th, don't think about that. But the reason why we don't have it usually that for our first Tuesday meeting is
School board?
because, right, school board and county board. But their meetings are actually earlier, so we can.
Do you mean earlier?
On the 5th and the 7th.
Oh, okay. So it is, our meeting is going to be on the 12th.
So we can do it on the
So
12th.
we don't have to change our meeting date, and we can actually have it on Tuesday the 12th.
It's not the one we canceled it.
During the regular agenda,
In August.
during the regular meeting, I believe the agenda item still says September 11th. We will need to amend that to say September 12th, but we can have it on our regular Tuesday date and time. The way it fell this year, it works.
So is there anything you want to go over with us on these dates?
Well, on August 28th, the property appraiser will send out
24th?
the- Excuse me?
24th or 28th?
24th, sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
24th, the property appraiser sends out the notice of proposed property tax to all property owners. So that's what, every year you get your first notice that tells you these are the preliminary taxes, estimates, and then dates. And that will actually let people know that September 12th will be our first public hearing to set the tentative millage rate and to adopt the tentative budget. And then our final will be on September 26th, and hopefully this year we don't have anything that happened like last year. We still had a meeting though, setting our final millage and final budget.
Okay, well, Lori, very great presentation, great overview, but, enough detail, I think, for what we needed. What last-minute questions do we have for our finance director? Questions? Wow, must have done a great.
That's because she did such a good job.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right, well, we appreciate it very much, Lori. Again, thank you to all of our staff that got their budgets in on time. Again, thank you for the opportunity, if this passes, that we're able to tell our residents, we understand what you're going through. We're going to try to help you this year. But don't forget next year. Yeah, I don't want any sudden surprises, because we actually could have went above rollback this year. You know, and I don't think any of our citizens, residents would have well, they might have minded, but they would have understood seeing everything that's going on. But for us to have the opportunity to help them out this year, I'm very, very happy with. What other questions do we have? Okay, if not, I'm going to adjourn this meeting, and we will get started again promptly at 6 o'clock with the regular city council meeting. Thank you. If it's raining, Chris, don't worry about it.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Looks like it's dry out there for a moment.